how much, where, and how you impound judgment in an automation process. And while we say, no, no, judgment is the hand of the auditor, the reality is that every time a system analyst designs a system, he will be impounding, to a certain degree, some degree of judgment and process, or his view of a process, into the automation of what he's doing. But it's an interesting kind of question, and we asked in the survey that we ran last Monday, in this Delphi exercise, we asked this question: what's going to happen with audit judgment? Meaning the first reaction is, of course, you're going to judge much more because you have kind of manual things done for you. But then you started thinking deeper into this thing, and you start thinking that maybe a lot of the judgment will be impounded into the processes. And I think that at the end, we don't know what's going to happen with audit judgment. Certainly, we thought a little bit more about it. And then, of course, there are the classic things on work automation, work sequence, and of course, we do perform that to what the audit engagement is identification of engagement and stakeholders, find out who is going to be doing the work, look at which procedures can be automated, verify them, and approve them. So basically, there's this whole thing about identify who does it, what is going to be done, reviewing it, what we've done. Now, if you drill down on this particular story, you finish up with a very big task. Because figure out that you understand your risk environment, then you have to do some kind of work, like Taylor and Fayol type of work, see what the auditors actually do in these hours of work. Just go step by step of those, let's say, 3,000 action sheets, actions that you have, and you choose which ones can be really automated. But you start thinking about, well, maybe you can do a better audit, looking at different forms of evidence, and now you have a different set of tool set to do that. So this was a pretty kind of complicated type of questions. And one of the questions, if you start engineering audit, start thinking about what can be formalized and what can't be formalized. What does it mean to formalize processes? And what are the difficulties that you have? For example, many humans don't like to be formalized, can be laborious and very costly. And of course, there are a few things that you can't formalize because you really don't have enough information, don't have a way, they're not repetitive processes. And so here we kind of talk a little bit about re-engineering the program. We talk about how to evolve, rethink what you're trying to establish. And you know, we are trying to do that in different dimensions here. During this whole 2 days that we're talking here, we are talking about a lot of emphasis on risks. Then we're talking about the monitoring of controls. So we kind of looked at it from different angles. And this is a real rethinking of the audit function, meaning all of us remember that before Sarbanes-Oxley, we were doing evaluation of controls just as well as we're doing now. Were we really? Not really. The emphasis now on controls, because you have to do an explicit opinion control from the outside audit, is very big. From the internal audit, now there is a sandbox type for opinion, and from one second to the other, while you were doing this all along, the emphasis has changed a lot. Same thing we heard about Charlie talking about Basel II. Basel II has changed a little bit of the focus and the direction of this thinking. And of course, that would imply on a different way of looking at things. One more thing is, interesting thing to talk about is the frequency. And you know, sticking to traditional audit rules the way we do today is an anachronism by definition, because the economics and the capabilities of information process change so dramatically that going back to when we set those standards makes no sense at all. Unfortunately, we are stuck at this and we are held accountable to this. But a real good re-engineering of the audit program will say, well, now we can measure things in any tenth of a second. Might not make sense to do it at every 10th second, but to do it every minute or every hour. And we have to rethink how that impounds on the way to discuss the program. And back to what we're talking about, organizing a different way. Our thinking, we always considered controls, we always considered data audits, and we always say that a continuous audit is a mix of control monitoring and data audits. And there is a relationship there that would be very nice if we could formalize. Is that you need a frame to compare against. So when Vasarhelyi's programs were looking for deterministic things to compare against, we had a baseline to compare. And in our learning with Siemens, it turns out that some of the baselines that come with a product like Approver are not very good ones. And we have to redesign those baselines, tailorize. So there's a whole set of discussions that audit automation brings us to. Next question, and Lily told me to run, so I'm going to be running here, is a question of scalability. Meaning, if you get some degree of automation, how scalable it is. And can you kind of, not only scalability upwards and expansion, is also kind of horizontal scalability, and how can you compare it, and et cetera, et cetera. And the one thing we talk here is how are you going to architect the automated audit, how are you going to use mobile agents or any type of agent in the automated audit, and the whole question of how are you going to do this? How are you going to have specialized audit software, specialized audit hardware, what architecture you're going to put it, how are you going to protect it, you know, what we call guarding the guards, meaning watching what the auditors are doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wouldn't even let go ahead. The other thing that we did here is it kind of brought up a whole set of software that's out there. And this is not a comprehensive map, but gave us kind of an idea of things that exist. I asked a question here to the panel yesterday. Being the last to talk in this domain is an advantage because no one can contest me. And I asked them, is internal audit and external audit, continuous audit, the same thing? Should you use the same tools? And it seems that the panel kind of agreed that same tool set applies to everyone. And I actually think that eventually, my friend Bob here at Caseware is going to come up with two tools. He's going to come out with a tool to be used more in a light client environment for an external audit that tags on to other people's processes into audit. And then a deeper, wiser, much more expensively, he smiles, a tool for internal audit. And I think that that's going to happen despite of yesterday the answers I got, etc. And I think we're going to have a dichotomization in this. The other thing I think, and I think will make him smile again, is that I think this is actually going to be a very big industry. And I think, you know, I have visited some audit organizations, and there is some internal developed tools that are rather remarkable. And these tools either are going to become products by themselves, or will happen like, you know, people mentioned Versa here, Deepak. Actually, Versa was really a piece of a PwC tool that was sold to Versa, a little bit integrated, and then SAP took an ownership of part of that and transformed that, and then they bought Versa and went into the SAP GRC toolset, and was not very much adapted. And so this kind of migration is going to happen. You know, you go into a ABC corporation, they have a great tool. The moment they realize they have something good going, if they are a computer company, maybe they can sell it. But they might just kind of give it to someone else, take ownership on that firm. And I think this is going to happen a lot. One more comment that might be not so obvious to you is, why is this thing going to become such a big industry? For an obvious reason. There will be less hands auditing directly, because the environments are all computerized. You can't really, I tried to explain yesterday to my wife that, you know, you can't manually audit systems that are computerized. The data is invisible, you don't touch it, okay? And, you know, the sniff test, sniffing a disk drive doesn't help you a lot. She didn't think it was funny. And you know, you can't really touch and sniff and squeeze a piece of data manually. So you need this kind of extra set of tools, but